Hey guys, it's Tony with Backwoods Biker Magazine and Wood Tramp Outdoors. A few days ago, we dropped a video for Battle Box Mission number 89, and in that, in the advanced box, was the Dead Fish folding chef's knife. I just happened to mention that somebody had complained about it being hot in the hand, and I said you need to modify knives. We got so many emails asking about that, and then last night a friend of mine from Klamath Falls area, Oregon, Greg, thank you very much for the call, by the way, although you was busting my chops pretty hard. And Greg said this is like the 10th or 12th time that you have mentioned modifying your knife some way. How about showing people how to modify the dead fish? That's what we're going to do today, so hang tight. I'm going to tighten up this shot a little bit, and we're going to be getting that for you, so hang tight. All right, so welcome back here. I've got, I've mentioned that it doesn't even matter if you have a customized knife, that you actually goes to the knife maker and you give them the specs. When you do that, you have to remember that not only are they craftsmen, but they're artists. And they're trying to interpret everything that you tell them. You know, they got a paradigm on how they do their knives. And then they got to take your design or your dream and put it through their paradigm and build the knife. And when they hand it to you, it's probably like 99.9% everything that you want. But I can tell you from my perspective, all the knives that I've ever had in my hands, there's always something that I do to a knife, even the best knives in the world. I've got a couple knives here. We'll talk about the dead fish in a second. But I've got a couple knives here in front of me right now. This was, I believe this was the 2021 Knife of the Year. And this is the MSK1 Elite Warrior Ultimate Survival Tips. And we've seen many knives from David and his company, and they're just superb knives all the way around. And this is the mini that goes in here, but I just want to talk to you about this particular knife. It came out of the box, a super knife, but still, what I had to do in order for it to feel right for me, I had to take a little bit of Scotch-Brite, not much, and kind of soften this area, and then we treat it with bush butter, which really does a great job, especially on micarta or wood. Either one, really doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't do too well for doesn't do much for a G10 because it is a closed cell scale. But we use bush butter on this, and man, it's a great knife. And then the other knife that I wanted to show you, we just got this, and we're still reviewing this knife, by the way. This comes from LT Wright. This is the Luminous 5, and this is probably the third or fourth blade that we have seen from LT. And yeah, I really dig this knife, and that was one of the questions I got. Do I still like the knife? We're still reviewing the knife, but coming from LT Wright, you're going to get a top shelf knife from a top shelf builder. His crew is second to none. And this also happens to have micarta scales on it, but unlike this with the profiles cut into the knife to give you a little bit more rugged stability with a heavy knife like this, these are kind of smooth for micarta, but here on the back side near the pommel, all the way down here on the rear of the tang, it was a little hot in my hands, when I was using it, chopping it, and I decided, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of sandpaper, and I sanded that down just a little bit, and then I finished it with some Scotch-Brite. And sandpaper I used was just this little 220 stuff, and then the Scotch-Brite is the maroon colored Scotch-Brite. And then, of course, after that, treated it with bush butter 2 or 3 times and buffed it out. So, that is a classic example of having to do something with all the knives. So we're going to get a tight shot, and I'm going to show you how to fix this knife. Hang tight. All right, guys, so this is the dead fish here. Beautiful little folder. I really like this knife, and as I said, it's going to go into our camp cook kit for our camp kitchen. But I have to agree, it is a little sharp here, right? And I think it needs a little mojo to it, and that's what I'm going to show you today. And in order to do this, you're going to have a controlled sanding block. And this is nothing. It's a piece of MDF that had leftover scrap. This was cut out of a belt sander belt, just stapled on there. You know, I got several of these in the shop that I use. And then this is just 220 sandpaper. And then I've got a maroon, and this one's been used a little bit. I like them a little bit soft like this. This is a Scotch-Brite, the maroon. And of course then the bush butter that we put. You don't have to have bush butter. You can use any treatment if you want to use linseed oil, tung oil, whatever. But this happens to be our go-to, right? So let me show you this. Now before I do, I want you to take a good look down in here. You see these set screws, they're on both sides. They are very small torques. And, you know, when I see things like this, it tells me that more than likely I'm going to be able to take these scales off. And a wooden scale especially, I want to treat the back also. On cheaper knives, they are not usually chemically attached and pinned also, right? But dead fish, this knife fooled me. I went to take out these set screws to take a look at it, and it is chemically attached, so you're not going to be able to do that. But you need to be careful whenever you're doing this that you don't cut yourself. You know, and I would recommend putting a piece of tape, you know, some blue tape across here, painter's tape or whatever, to keep yourself from being cut. But I'm going to be very, very careful here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and take this, and we're going to start by just carefully. This is what I'm saying. This is why it's a controlled block. You're able to control everything that you're doing right here. And just be careful you don't get off into the stainless steel of your blade or whatever blade you've got. Right? And I just go all the way around one side at a time. I'm hoping you can see that okay, what I am doing here. Right? Blocks will help you do this and stay controlled. Right? Now that's pretty soft right there. Now this happens to be what they call African rosewood. Right? Don't take a lot. It's a harder wood. It's not like pine or anything like that. And it's very easy when you have a block like this to be able to control what you're doing. All right, so I'm going to turn that over, and I'm going to do the other side. Same exact thing. All right, and this is your rough sanding. Now you can't. I don't know if you can see that or not. No idea. You're shaking your head no. Okay. All right. But you can see what I'm taking off though, right? You see that light spot right there? I've taken that off. That's the first thing you do. And then again, you get down here and you're going to be careful, because I don't want to scratch the blade up. Then I got to do more work to be able to get that out. Okay, so now that is my rough sanding with this particular. I think this is probably 80 grit sandpaper. All right. Now that you've got that, and you feel that, when you feel it, it feels fuzzy because of what you've just taken off. All right. So now we're going to move to the 220, and I'll fold that up just a little bit to give me more control. Right. I folded that dude twice. That gives me a little bit of control, and then I just slowly stroke that thing. I'm not going to try to really get aggressive with this sandpaper because we have already gotten aggressive, right? That looks good. What we're doing is taking them fuzzy edges off. That's one side. That feels really good. Now for the most part, if all you have is sandpaper, you could probably stop with this 220 if you don't have the Scotch-Brite available to you. Okay. All right, and then I'll just go ahead and hit this a little bit to roughen this up. I'm opening the pores is what I'm doing of this rosewood, because when we get to the point we're going to put the treatment on it, we want it to be able to really absorb that bush butter. All right. folding it gives you nice control. Okay, now we've got that part. Now, to finish this with the sanding part, and really, Scotch-Brite at this point isn't doing too much sanding. All it's doing is making it really smooth. Right? Okay. Really smooth. And now we're going to move on to the very last step. Yeah, that feels really soft in my hand. There are no hot spots on this. So the next thing that we're going to do, and last, we're going to take a pad of the bush butter. There it is. And we're just going to go ahead and start stroking that on here. Now, if you've never used bush butter before, I'm doing that very lightly because you can see it comes off, and can you see the residue that's leaving on there? Yeah, you can. All right, don't panic. And I'm going to do the other side also. Now, this is the point where I say you should probably tape it, because if not, you can end up hurting yourself. Okay, so now you got this on here. Now, on scales like this, any wooden handles that I use, whether it's an axe handle or a garden tool, it doesn't matter. We want to emulsify this wax, and it happens from the heat. Now, there are several ingredients in bush butter, all natural. There is no animal fat in this, like my dad used to make. Right, now you see what I'm doing here, and you see it's starting to get this rich luster. And the more that you rub this with your fingers, you're heating up that wax, and it is actually being driven down inside of the scales. All right, now it's just not for blades. You can use this on firearms and do it the same way. And you'll see what I do with the last thing. I even put it on all the steel, because it's great for keeping your knives from rusting. Now this happens to be stainless, so it's not going to rust, but I still like it to be in that pivot, right? So that's once. All right, now what I do is I take two different rags, and I hold that rag, and I just kind of drag them along there, and what that is doing, that's taking off the excess, right? Maybe you're saying, well, don't you want to leave the excess on? Well, after you do it about 3 times. I wish you could feel that. This isn't fill-o-vision, no, right? So then I'm going to take the bush butter again, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. All the way around. Just put me a simple little layer on there. A little bit goes a long way, boys and girls. You can see that there. If you've used this before, leave a comment in the video. Let other people know what you think about this stuff. Right? Alright, we're going to do the same exact thing. We're just going to emulsify that wax, get it nice and hot. So now we got 2 layers that we're putting on here. Making sure that we stay away from that blade, because that sucker will open you up. It's sharp. Very, very sharp. Alright, we'll just keep doing that till you'll feel it start to smooth, and then it gets tacky again. That's what you're wanting. That's saying I'm getting down in there, and that knife's loving it. I wish you could hear this knife talking right now. It's saying, I love that. I love that. Rub me some more. Alright, so now we're going to take the rag again. Right here. And the reason that I like to use the rags, 2 rags, is because your hand is hot. And you want that wax to start to cool down, and the heat of your hand will prevent that. But with a rag in that hand, it gives you lots of control. Oh yeah, that is getting super smooth now. Alright, that was twice that we did that. Alright, and I could stop right there. But, me being me, I want this to be on here one more time, right? And I'm also just going to run it right down this blade, especially here where it's going to pivot at. Again, it's stainless. It's not going to rust on you. But I like it down in here. See that? All right, I'm going to go ahead and rub that in. Then you have to be careful when you're doing this, obviously. You spread that butter on that blade. Now what happens with this is that there is a wax in this, a natural wax, and a bunch of other ingredients as well that makes this have the magical mojo that everybody likes. But you can see that now, that pivot, it's in that pivot. Go ahead and close it, right? And when I put my knives away, I put them away with a heavy layer of bush butter on the blade especially. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take this rag, hold that knife again, and very lightly buff it. We're not rubbing it on, man. I mean, we are buffing. See that? Now, because of the fact that, you're handling the bush butter, your hands are full of bush butter right now. Don't wipe them off on the rag, but grab something else and just start putting that bush butter from your hands. It's even great on leather. I think we may have treated this maybe once. We'll do it a couple more times, especially here in the threads. It protects the threads from rot. It'll last you a long time. These sheaths that come with anything from LT are made by JRE Industries, and we'll be doing an article on them sometime this year, I believe. But now back to the dead fish. This is going to make a wonderful addition to our camp kitchen, to our cook kit. Right? Just buffing that. That's all we're doing. Now, look at the luster on this dude. Remember what it looked like before? Look at it now. Oh yeah. It's a happy knife. All right, hang tight. Thanks for watching, but you can see now that this thing is ready to go. There are no hot spots on this, and I know the guy that was the chef, I don't know, I wish I remember who sent that video to me, but I don't pay attention to where it comes from. I just watch it when somebody puts it in front of me. But he was worried that he couldn't rock his vegetables, I mean, just for me, if I want to do something like that, I'm just going to readjust my hands a little bit here. And if anything else, I can always do this. But that's something that you have to work out. What I worked out is what was important to me. Now, I do want to say this to you here again. Not all knives in this price range have the chemical attachment because it's an extra cost to a already budgeted knife. But Dead Fish, they did. They're a great company. And I'm sure that you can take the scales off, chemically attached, but you'd probably ruin the scales and have to replace them. But the only reason I even bring that up to you is if you have removable scales, just like this knife right here. This is the MSK1, and the scales on this is interchangeable. You can change them, you can remove them. But what I did was I took them off and I treated the back of it also, just in case there is a migration of water somehow that gets under those tight scales, because sometimes that does happen. So I just mentioned that to you because if not, and water does get under there, it's probably going to compromise your scales. So that's it, man, right there. That's how to take those hot spots off of any knife. Do a little customizing, make it your own. We'll put a lanyard on here, an orange one, of course. Drop it anywhere in the camp, you're going to be able to find it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for the questions. And Greg, thanks for gigging me. It's good to talk to you on the phone and tell your family hello. So until next time, you guys ride free, you live free, and as always, you be safe out there.